Garrett and Ted Sutton join me here today, and I'm going to have clickable links for them in the show notes. You might recognize Garrett from his many books, Rich Dad Poor Dad books, and that's frankly, Garrett, mostly what I've read associated with you. I can't tell you how many audiobooks I've listened to, but I really appreciate your time here today.
Well, thank you, Jack. Great to be with you and great to talk about asset protection and the Corporate Transparency Act.
I know we're kind of under a time crunch, so let's just dive in on that. Could you talk a little bit about that and what everybody needs to do and be prepared for this?
Well, I'll give you the quick overview and Ted can tell you the details, but basically the federal government through the U.S. Treasury Department is demanding all corporations, LLCs, and limited partnerships to file sensitive information with them. You need to file a statement as to who is in control of the business, who owns 25% or more. You need to provide them with an image of your driver's license or passport. It's all going into this giant database. The thought is that this will help combat money laundering and terrorist financing. But as the Wall Street Journal wrote in one of their editorials, are the bad guys really going to self-report here? But if you don't report by the end of the year, the penalties are significant: $10,000 and/or 2 years in jail. So this is a law that no one's talking about.
Is this something that you should expect your tax preparer or somebody to bring this up to you? Like, a lot of this is going to be under the radar otherwise.
Yeah, so there have been a few professionals who talked about it. A lot of them are still left in the dark about this. Some accountants are doing their filings for their clients, but a lot of accountants are hesitant to do it because they think it's the unauthorized practice of law. Some attorneys are doing it like us here at Corporate Direct. We're helping our clients complete all these filings. It hasn't been fun, but we're doing it. But you don't need a professional to do it. You can do it on your own on the FinCEN website. But the thing is that there is an ongoing element to the Corporate Transparency Act. So, you submit your information about the company and its owners. But, if you have a name change for the company, or you add a new owner who meets the requirements, or you have a new manager, or the company moved addresses, then you only have 30 days to get that information to FinCEN, which is the branch of the government that's going to be handling all this information. So, in short, you can do it on your own, but I think it would help to have a professional help you through it, do the filings for you, and then when any updates need to be made, they'll be there to help you out.
And one other thing to know is when you update your driver's license, you need to submit a new copy to the Department of Treasury or your passport. And so one of our goals at Corporate Direct here is to keep track of your expiration dates on these documents and to remind you that it's time to update the information with the federal government.
Okay, so once you do this the first time, is this something that has to be revisited when those documents expire and you get a new one?
And or bring on a new manager.
And another thing is that there's not an annual requirement there. So, it's not like with the Secretary of State where you set it up and you have to pay an annual filing. With the Corporate Transparency Act, like you do an initial filing when your company's set up, or, if it's been around for a few years till the end of this year. If any of that information changes, it could be next year, it could be 10 years from now. But when that information changes, you need to submit an updated report.
And
You
what's kind
mentioned
of weird is this law is aimed towards the little guy. The big companies have an exception. They don't have to file this report. This is aimed at people who own a duplex in an LLC, someone who operates a brick and mortar store through a corporation or LLC. They're not going after the big companies. They're going after the rest of us. And so, a lot of people think, well, that can't apply to me, but it does.
Yeah, you mentioned that this is kind of to deter money laundering and a few other things. So,
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I took a poll on my YouTube channel. You can head over to YouTube, Corporate Direct, post videos there once a week. But one of the polls that I made for the community is, do you think that the bad guys are going to report this information to FinCEN? and a whopping 92% said no. So, I think that shows where the public opinion is, but I also think it's true. I mean, if you're a criminal, you're not going to follow the laws. And so you stupid pass a law when criminals aren't going to follow them anyway. So we'll see how effective this law is. But, myself and most other people are very skeptical.
It is the law, and so we want to make sure our clients are compliant. No.
Right. So you already kind of gave me a glimpse of the timeline. We have till the end of the year to get this submitted.
Yeah. So the timing to submit the reports depends upon when the entity was formed. If you have an entity that was formed in 2023 or earlier, you have until the end of this year or December 31st, 2024 to submit your reports to FinCEN. If you set up an entity in 2024, you only have 90 days to get that information to them. But if you set up an entity in 2025 or later, the timeline gets even shorter. And you only have 30 days to get your information against them. But if you set up an entity now or in the future, you're not going to have as much time to get that information. So the earlier, the better.
The earlier, the better. Yeah. And you said you could do this online yourself, but it's probably good to get some advice.
Yeah. Well, most people don't know that there's an ongoing element to this new law. When you get a new driver's license or when you change your address, you need to submit an updated report. So important to get that in as soon as you can, but it's also important to have people who know what they're doing help you do the filings for you just to avoid any.
Yeah, Garrett, this to be honest with you, I think this is the first time I've heard of this, Garrett, regarding this. If Is there anything else that we need to be aware of? I mean, we're coming to the end of the year here. I mean, we're talking in late August or early September here. We're kind of coming into the backside of 2024. What else do we need to be aware of, if anything?
I think there's going to be a crush at the end of the year. I think people should do it now rather than later and miss. The other thing to know, Jack, is some states are starting to require this information to be filed with them at a state level. New York has this for 2026 for LLCs. California and Maryland are considering such filings. So it's just more of federal and local state governments demanding more information of us. Our job is to let our clients know what the law is and follow. So we're just going to have to keep track of all the requirements that are coming our way.
Yeah, this is just notorious when it comes to the government assuming that the bad guys, quote unquote, are going to do something about it or it's going to curb whatever they're trying to do. Yeah, if we watch Breaking Bad, Walter White, I'm sure he's going to file regarding his money laundering.
Right. Well, and when it comes to money laundering, I was talking with a group of CPAs. There were four of us, CPAs and attorneys who had over 150 years experience, working with businesses and clients. And of all of us, only one had ever experienced a money laundering issue. The Mexican cartel was buying duplexes in Reno, which is a good investment, but they'd only seen one money laundering instance. So to have 32 million businesses file these reports with the federal government to combat something that they claim is a big problem, but we just don't see it. So, it just seemed like overkill to me.
Do you think this was somebody's pet project or something that they decided to tackle this?
I think it's part of an ongoing effort to just demand more and more information of the American citizen. Who's behind it? I'm not sure. It'll be interesting to see if it's ever overturned.
Yeah, like you mentioned, there's going to be kind of a mad rush at the end of the year as people realize that this is required of them. And then we know how efficient things are when it gets into the government system too. So you probably need a little time to validate that they actually received it.
Well, and the other thing is the government proudly said that if anybody hacks into this, there's a 5-year jail term. They made this announcement the same week as the Solar Winds hack when 16 government agencies were hacked. And so, when are the hackers ever caught? I just haven't heard of any cases where the hackers are sent to prison. This is going to be the greatest target rich database for someone to hack into anything because you're going to have social security numbers, driver's license, personal address. So I really hope that the government has protections for this database that they claim they have. Because to date, I just don't see many hackers get caught.
Do you advise you mentioned that you either have to submit your driver's license or your passport, or is there pieces of information that you would suggest maybe somebody should submit over others?
No, there's a list that you have to file, and I would just
Oh,
file
okay.
a minimum required. But, that driver's license, that's private information, in my opinion. Of course, the state has it, but this is a national database of the federal government of everybody's driver's license and or passport. And the tricky part is that when that expires, you have to update the information. And failing to do so can lead to some serious penalty.
Sure. Well, just to remind everybody, head over to corporatedirect.com and you'll learn a little bit more about Garrett and crew there. I can't recommend your books enough, Garrett, regarding everything from Fail Not Fail, Run Your Own Corporation, Start Your Own Corporation,
Yeah, loophole.
Loopholes of Real Estate. I mean, there's quite a few books that everybody can definitely check out. If you found some value in what we're talking about here so far, do us a quick favor, share this with one of your investor friends. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us a quick like and subscribe. So, Garrett, I'm going to change the conversation slightly because we get this asked all the time. And coming directly from you, I think we're going to finally settle the big debate. You're buying rental properties. Do you put a one rental property in every a single LLC, or do you have one umbrella company? How should we structure that to protect our assets?
That's a really good question, Jack. So, if we have our first rental property, a duplex, we want to take title to that duplex in the name of an LLC in which this is formed in the state where the duplex is located. So, we have an Oregon duplex, it's in an Oregon LLC. We buy a duplex in New Mexico, it's in a New Mexico LLC because you're doing business in that state. You're collecting rents in Mexico and Oregon. But then for the greater asset protection, we like to have the Oregon LLC and the New Mexico LLC owned by one Wyoming LLC. And that's where the asset protection comes in, Jack. If you get in a horrific car wreck, we always want you to have insurance, perhaps an umbrella policy of insurance. But if it's a big enough claim, they're going to want to come after your real estate. Having that Wyoming LLC or Nevada in some cases as an asset protection block is really a good strategy. Now, to your other question, should you have 5 properties in one LLC or just one per LLC, one property per LLC? That's a judgment call. The best asset protection is one property per LLC. If you have 10 properties in one LLC and you get sued by a tenant over one property, the lawsuit is against the LLC that holds 10 properties. So the tenant could get at the equity in all 10 properties. So we don't want to create target rich LLCs. And so I like having, maybe 1, 2, in some cases 3, but no more than 3 properties per one LLC. And those LLCs are owned by the one Wyoming LLC that offers the superior asset protection on the outside attack when you get sued over a car.
I've heard some rumblings. I don't know if it was Wyoming, but there was rumblings regarding changes associated with that too, because there are some states that favor Wyoming. Was it Wyoming that had some changes, or maybe I'm mistaken?
No, they changed their annual filing fee from $60 to $62. So
Oh,
that was the big Wyoming change. Wyoming offers superior asset protection. It protects the single member LLC when you're, Jack, are the one owner. Even a single member LLC is protected. This is true in Nevada and Delaware, other good asset protection strict states. But we like Wyoming because they don't list your name on the state website. So you have some privacy. And compared to Nevada and Delaware, which are at least $352 or $350 a year for the annual filing, Wyoming is just $62 a year. So you have good asset protection, a low cost, and privacy. Your name is not listed on the state website.
Oh, does that kind of null and void that piece of it?
Hopefully not. I mean, people are worried about this, and if there is a hack, there will be information out. But in terms of how this information will be used, it's kind of like the IRS when you file a tax return. Those tax returns, except in one case where people were fined and punished, those tax returns are confidential and are usually not leaked to the public. And they claim the same will be true for this FinCEN database on the CTA.
Yeah, because we know that they're just ironclad regarding the safety of our information. Wasn't our social security numbers were just cracked too recently?
Correct.
So,
Correct.
well, Garrett and Ted, I really appreciate both of your times. I know you're under a time crunch. I hate to do this, but we'll jump right into the rapid fire questions unless there's anything else you wanted to make sure we covered here today.
Well, we set up entities in all 50 states. So you can call Corporate Direct and get a free 15-minute consultation with a incorporating specialist and learn our fees and how we can help. We do all 50.
Yeah, and on top of that, we do provide a lot of free information to people. You go to corporatedirect.com, you can see the web link on the bottom of the screen. You can sign up for a monthly newsletter where we send you 2 articles a month just on current events and things like that. We also have a YouTube channel where I post videos once a week on something that relates to corporate law or the Corporate Transparency Act. So make sure to check all that out, and we're here to help people and we're here to help inform them on things that matter.
And with that, we're ready for the rapid fire.
Okay. Well, let's start things off.
Well, what do you think, Ted? I mean, I think the one line that they tell themselves is that there'll be no problems here, and you got to expect problems. Some people are too cautious because they know there'll be problems, and they call it paralysis of analysis. So you got to get in there and know that you're going to make mistakes, especially at the start. But I think too many people just have the rose-colored glasses and think that everything's going to be fine. I think you just have to be prepared for what can go wrong, which is why you always want to have an LLC for title to this real estate. Because if you get sued by a tenant and titles in your individual name, all of your individual assets are exposed. So I think you're being realistic is one thing that people really should consider doing.
Yeah, we probably could spend a whole episode on that, how the money can flow from one entity to another or to the individual without that piercing the veil. I think there's a lot of mistakes made just on that.
Right. Right. You want to make sure that you have the tenant write a check to the LLC that's on title and you have a bank account for that. You have to have a separate bank account. You can't use your personal bank account for that LLC money. And then you want to pay all the expenses through the LLC, transfer the money from the title holding LLC to the Wyoming LLC, which can kind of be a piggy bank for you and be protected. You transfer the money out to yourself. You're going to work with a CPA to make sure you're paying all your taxes on this. We set this up for thousands and thousands of people, and it works well.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Buy more real estate earlier. I wish I'd done that.
I get that as the number one response, I bet.
Ted's heard me say that a few times, and so he's already bought a piece of real estate before age 30. He's investing, which is great. I wish I'd done that at age 30.
Well, I'm hoping I'm going to beat you on that, Ted, because my daughter, she's 18 and she's been saving. Now, that's what her hope is. She's going to buy her first one here.
Yeah, but we have a friend of ours who has a 19-year-old son, and he just bought his first piece of real estate. He has me. I bought mine at 28. You beat me there. I'm happy for you. More power to you.
Do you have a book recommendation or what are you reading right now?
What are you reading?
So the thing is that I write books, working on writing one right now. That's where all my heart and soul has been. It's just writing a book. And that will come out sometime next year. It's TBD. You guys will find out about it when the time comes. One book that I really like is The Richest Man in Babylon, just because it's kind of like Rich Dad Poor Dad. It does a good job of simplifying financial concepts for people. I think that's really powerful. So that's a book that I have read recently and really enjoyed it.
And I'm
And
in the same
finally,
boat. I'm writing a book. And so once I get into writing a book, I don't read any others, unfortunately.
well, Garrett, is there a point where you're not writing a book?
Yeah. It's kind of like Eminem when it comes to that. Eminem just keeps releasing albums and this guy just keeps writing books. So,
Right.
yeah.
I've never been compared to Eminem.
Well, there's a first time for everything.
For
The rap of
real estate investing books.
Yeah. And then finally, what single strategy, process, or tool have you implemented that has had the biggest time saving impact to you or your business?
That's a good question. So we have a lot going on here. And so with the Corporate Transparency Act, and the thing that really helped us is that we've hired more people to share the workload. We don't use AI too much. I think just having a team that's there to help you with the things you want to accomplish is really important. When you're a real estate investor, it's important to have a CPA and an attorney on your team who can be there for you when you have questions about things. And in the office, we have a lot of different people they serve a lot of different jobs. And so we've had to bring more people onto our team. I think the more people you have to take the workload off of each other, the better. So,
well, that's a good answer. When it comes to the new technologies and all, I'm going to be listening to a webinar tomorrow on attorney ethics and AI because it's a huge issue right now. We don't know where AI is going. We don't know how it's going to affect the practice of law. And so I'm very interested in what direction this all will lead. So that's something I'm paying attention to, Jared.
Yeah. AI has been one of those things that's definitely a disruptor, but unless you've experienced it, it'll give you information and it'll read as if it knows exactly what it's saying, but it's just kind of spitting out info.
There's one of those examples of AI hallucination, and that's a really good word for it. That is something we're going to have to deal with over the next 5 years.
yeah. And another thing about AI is that I think it'll be a good tool to use. Yesterday I plugged in, hey AI, hey ChatGPT, write an article about XYZ, and then I just plugged in Chuck. But a lot of the information it provided was legally inaccurate. So I think right now, when AI tells you to do something, it's important to proceed with caution because what they plug out, what the output is, may not always be accurate. So we are in the early stages. I think it'll be a tool we can use, but there definitely needs to be some improvements. Don't go to ChatGPT and type in legal advice because if you do, you can get in a lot of trouble. I think that's important for that out there.
You're going to be hallucinating.
Well, Garrett and Ted, this has been fantastic. Again, you could learn more at corporatedirect.com. That's going to be a clickable link in the show notes. But I really appreciate your time again. I hope we'll be able to talk again, especially Ted. You're going to have a book release. It would be great to have you back for that.
Good. Thanks for having us on, Jack.